Okay, so a few things in terms of when you're creating your script. Keep in mind that you are going to always add, most of the time, add the script to an object. Again, to control that object one way or another. In this case, you're adding the scripts, and then the scripts that you're going to be working on for the exercises are going to be all added to the camera. Okay? So, for instance, just to give you an idea, let me bring up the correct scene here. Now, one of the things to keep in mind when you go into doing your exercises, you're going to be creating 3 different scripts. You don't need to create 3 different scenes or anything like that. And you're going to be adding the scripts to the camera. The book will show you how to add the scripts to the camera. But basically, for the most part, you're just going to go to Add Component once you've created the script and add it that way. Or you can click and drag it to the script, to the object itself, and it will add it on there. So if you'll notice on my inspector here, down at the bottom, there's 3 different scripts already set up. And these are the 3 exercises, right? Now, to run, right now, to run the scripts, if I do Command P or hit play, it'll run the different, it'll run all 3 scripts. And it's kind of hard to tell which one begins first and so on. So what I would suggest, I'm going to go ahead and clear this, and you make sure you open up the console. So under Window, you're going to go down to the console, and then you can park the console wherever you want it to, on the top, over here, wherever, right? Or down to the bottom. But I'm going to go ahead and park it out here because it's going to generate these prints on the console. Now, so what you can do is, down at the bottom, notice you can check or uncheck each of the scripts. So again, notice that there's a check mark. Here's the script. Remember, I've selected the main camera, which has all 3 different scripts. As long as there's no conflict between the scripts, it'll work on that camera. So all I do is just uncheck, and now there's no scripts affecting it. But let's say I just want to run the second script, then I can just make sure that one is checked and the other 2 is unchecked. So it doesn't matter what order they're in. That's that particular script that I just ran. So you can test out your script by just running that particular script. Okay. Now, in terms of troubleshooting, and this is where there are some things that the book doesn't go over that I think is important for you guys to understand in terms of troubleshooting your script. So to open up your script, hold on, let me change the scene here. Once you have the script within the camera, you can double click either the script itself. You go to the script and select the script and double click it, and it'll open up with the mono develop that is part of Unity. It comes with Unity, but it's not integrated with Unity, or it is integrated, but it's not Unity, a part of Unity itself. So, for instance, you can do that, or you can double click in the inspector on the script itself, and then it'll open up the script, and it'll look something like this. So now it's opened up in mono develop Unity, right? So right now everything works on here in terms of this script. So when this is the hello world that you guys are going to be doing. So if I go back to Unity and make sure hello world is checked, hit play, and it'll say hello world, right, in the console. That's what we told it to do. Now, if there's a problem with the script, like for instance, one important thing that I've noticed a lot of times people forget is to add semicolons at the end of, basically, in terms of when you're setting up each of the lines right here, each of the expressions, So when you're finished with an expression and you are finished with the expression, it's like putting a period. Think about putting a period on it, okay? So for instance, this particular line 2 right here, I'll purposely take away the semicolon, which always should have a semicolon at the end for that end of that particular expression. Now, I'll go back to Unity. Oh, wait a minute. Don't you know it? That ran.
You didn't rebuild it.
Oh, I didn't rebuild it. Thank you. Okay. There we go. So when there's an error, the semicolon right there, you'll notice that it gives you this exclamation mark with the stop sign there, right? And you see that here. You may see it on the console. If you don't have the console up, usually it's down at the bottom over here in red. Okay? So when it comes up in red, obviously there's some kind of problem there. So you can select that on the console and expand it and try to figure out what it's trying to tell you right here. And you can also double click it and it brings you to the script where that problem is. So it'll open up that script by double clicking on the console where it gives you a description of that, and it tells you what script the problem is in, what line, and so on. So now, right now, we look at this, we're not maybe too sure where the problem is. You can also run the script one more time, do a start debugging. Now, this is going to be important. So you go to run, start debugging, and then it'll get to where it thinks the problem is. All right? So obviously it's showing you there's an error. Remember, I took out the semicolon. Remember, the semicolon, as I said before, you want to put at the end of the expression. So what it's doing right now, it's thinking that this goes on, this expression continues on right here. It's like doing this, basically. Oops. Sort of something like that, all in one line, right? So when it does that, and you run it, and it'll say unexpected symbol, public, expecting a period or semicolon. So most of the time it will give you some type of hint. So in this case, we know it's the semicolon, right? That's missing. And we even though we know that it's not here where it needs a semicolon, so you got to watch that. That's the only thing that sometimes is not very accurate on. It tells you that, it's right, at least when I look at it, you might look at it and go, that's where probably I need to put a semicolon somewhere. But look before that, and to see that you didn't miss a semicolon. So obviously that's where we need that semicolon. So I'll put the semicolon there. Then I'll run it again. So by the way, the shortcut is Command Return. And notice I didn't get any errors. And then when I go back to Unity, it clears up the error. So I'll press play again, and it ran it, no problem. Okay. So let's do another common error that I see a lot of times you guys are doing, is sometimes forgetting to put the curly braces. So for instance, I'll take this one out. Again, I will do run, or stop the build, run it again. And you'll notice that it's telling me keyword, blah, blah, blah. Well, basically it's telling me, so if you roll over it, and you'll notice that it does tell me a little bit of where the problem, unexpected symbol, right curly brace or left curly brace. And basically, sometimes it will tell you that it's missing a curly brace. Okay, in this case, it's not necessarily telling you that. Again, because it thinks that this right here is a whole block. And this, okay, from left curly brace to right curly brace is referred to as a block, right? So it thinks this whole expression here that you have, that's or starting from here all the way through line 12 is supposed to be all together. So that's why it's giving this first error right here of void. It's not supposed to have these two voids in there. Void basically means that it doesn't. You're not expecting a return on the expression of some sort, right? So, and so you got both of them right in the same block. Okay, so so what we need to do obviously is we're missing that left and right brace. So here's what you can do. If it gives you, if it tells you missing a curly brace somewhere, in this case it kind of did. What you should start doing is first of all is click on the first curly brace, the first one on top. Okay, and then it should pair up. It should highlight the one that's supposed to pair up with it. So for instance, if I click this one right here, notice that when I click on this, it shows up, it's highlighted here, because this corresponds to this one, right? When I click on this one, it thinks this one corresponds to this one, right? Remember, so this is the left curly brace. So this is the left curly brace, and this is the right curly brace. And so the way it's set up now, because it is missing a curly brace, it thinks that's supposed to be together. But in reality, we know it's not. What's supposed to happen is that it's supposed to have even number of curly braces. So when I click on this one, notice nothing highlights. Then we know that maybe it's missing a curly brace somewhere in there. So if you click on all the curly braces, it should highlight each one of them. And it doesn't necessarily indicates to you right here, like this is, it doesn't necessarily tell you where it's missing, but you know that it's missing a curly brace. Okay, and as we know already, we just took it out from over here. So now if I add it back, a right curly brace, notice when I click here, it corresponds to this one correctly, not all the way down to line 15. When I click on line 4, left curly brace, notice it corresponds to the other curly brace down at the bottom, and so on, right? So I run it, now it's fine. So that's another thing that I see a lot in terms of you're missing the curly brace. The other, and by the way, this works also with the parentheses. So if I click on the right parentheses or the left parentheses, it highlights the correct other parentheses. So again, if I click the left parentheses, it highlights the right parentheses, and so on and so on. So watch out for that. Another really minor thing, but it happens a lot, is that sometimes, let me see if this works. So sometimes, for instance, you're supposed to have an uppercase P or lowercase p, and you miss just something like that, then it's going to give you an error. If you see, for instance, in this case, notice I changed the lowercase p to an uppercase p, and you see it's in red. That word is in red. Then you know right away there's something wrong with that particular word that you typed in. So again, I'll hit command. Oops. So I'll hit command return, and you'll notice the nameplate does not exist in the current context. So it doesn't understand that that's supposed to be a function. A function, by the way, is something already set up through Unity or through C#, basically, that has an underlying things that it's supposed to do. They're supposed to carry out, or method. So sometimes it's referred to as method, sometimes it's referred to a function. So in this case, obviously the problem is that it's an uppercase P, right? So little things like that can matter in terms of, I've seen also a lot of people forgetting the quotes. So they forget the end quote, and they don't realize that they need to have an end quote on there. So when you start a quote, always add another quote. So the other thing you might want to do is, like, right away, when you start setting up your functions, like start or update or whatever, that you put the parentheses, that you put the curly brackets right away first, those things should go first before you add anything else. You're going to be using pretty simple stuff right now, like if statements, if else, else if, and so on. Each one of those require parentheses, and especially the if statement, because you're going to start with if, parentheses, parentheses, curly brace, curly brace. Get those in there, then go back and add the content. That would be the best suggestion I could tell you in terms of making sure that you're not missing curly braces and parentheses and things like that. Okay. Now, in terms of the exercise, so I can tell you that, for instance, the first exercise is going to be pretty much based on the while loop. You can use the while loop that tells you that it talks about in the book. If you kind of follow that, change a few numbers around, you'll get that. For the second exercise is also based on the for loop. And you'll need to add more things to it. The modulus, it gives you a hint in terms of using modulus on there. You'll see what it's talking about. That's basically where you're dividing one number to another. Then the third exercise is a combination of those things. Okay? And obviously you have to go through it and kind of figure it out yourself. But I'll tell you right now, you're going to use a for loop for the third exercise. But if you don't understand the Fibonacci principle, I can go over it with you as you get to the third exercise, which uses that principle. Okay. Let me see. Is there anything else that I think you guys need to remember? Again, make sure you understand in terms of what functions are, what methods are. And basically put them together. And then it's important that you understand the operators on there, and then also the different how to use the if statements, if else statements, else if statements, and so on. Okay, that's again all within the book. So keep going back to those. So the other thing I want to show you guys is somewhat important in terms of when you do your exercises. Is basically you have to decide if you want that particular function or whatever it is that you're programming to play only once or to play it over and over to check every frame. All right. So here's what's going to happen. So for instance, we saw this already in terms of the hello world. Right. Here's the script. So if you'll notice, it says void start print hello world. So as it says, here's another thing I need to tell you guys about. So as you can see here, it says use this for initialization, and that's a comment, right? We know it's a comment because there's 2 forward slashes in front of that. So when there's a comment in front of it, then basically it doesn't play out in your script. Okay, that's another way to troubleshoot your script. If you think there's a problem somewhere, you can put 2 forward slashes on it, and that particular thing won't play out. And if you see that it fixes your script, then you know that particular line is a problem. So for instance, say that I'll put this. Well, let me just show you this real quick. So I'm going to put print. So my open and close parentheses, semicolon, and then I'll do quote, quote, and so I'll just copy this and put that in here. So update is called once per frame. So this, what should happen is we should see hello world at the beginning once, and this repeated over and over, and it continuously repeated over and over until we completely stop it. Okay. So real quickly. So we'll save it, and I'll run it just to make sure I didn't commit any errors. All right, everything's good. Go back over here, play, and you'll notice that it keeps adding to it. Notice it keeps adding on there. Update is called once per frame. Update is called once per frame. So if I scroll all the way up, I can see hello world all the way in the top, but it keeps adding to it continuously, you see, until I go ahead and stop it. So keep in mind that if you want something to run just one time, which is, by the way, in all your exercises, that's what you're doing. So that means that you only need it to run in void start function within these blocks right here. So most of everything you're going to do is going to be done within that block, not within this particular block, the update. As it says on there, it updates once per frame, continuously. So if there's something that you need to update continuously or check on continuously, that's where you're going to put it in terms of when you run your script. Now, as I said before, one way to troubleshoot is to notice what I'll do right now. I'll select this right here, or a couple of ways I can do it. I could just type in the / in front of it, or I can right mouse click and toggle line comments. And notice what it did for me. It put the 2 / and now this is all gray. So you remember how I continuously kept running that, right? So now if I go back, I'll save this again. Oops. Forgot, I went too far. Notice I commented out the last bracket. So unexpected symbol, end of file. Okay. So I need to get rid of that. Run it again. Okay, everything's cool. Because this left bracket corresponds to that bracket. Okay, so I comment this out. Remember it kept before, so the script is still there. Remember all this that it kept updating and updating and updating, all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to clear that. Then I'm going to do, I'm going to run it again or go into play mode. And notice what it did. It only shows me hello world. Right? So the only thing it printed out is hello world, even though in my script I have this on here. But I commented out. So if I thought there was a problem going on with that particular script, I can comment it out. And then if I see that, okay, that's not the problem, then I can just erase the / and my script is live again. So that's another way that you can try to troubleshoot. Okay?